Well, as the Voice to Parliament debate rages on, we've seen a rare intervention today. Scott Morrison has completely rejected the government's Voice model. It's his first public comments outlining his position on the Voice.
The Labor Party made it clear from the outset it was the Voice or nothing, leaving no room for compromise. I chose not to divide the country over the issue, especially it would have no material impact on the welfare of Indigenous peoples. In my experience, we will make better progress on improving the lives of Indigenous Australians by focusing on what we can agree on to get done on the ground, rather than gambling with our constitution.
And the boss of ASIO is warning there could be violent protests in the lead up to the referendum.
We have done a recent assessment where we look at the possible threat to the referendum. At this stage, we are not seeing indications of people planning a terrorist attack as part of that. Unfortunately, we do expect people, as they're exchanging their views and presenting their views online, that might inflame some people. There may be some protest and counter-protest, and some of that might result in spontaneous violence.
Let's bring in my political panel, National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie and Labor Senator Tony Sheldon. Bridget, were you surprised to see Scott Morrison speak publicly today for the first time on this issue? And what did you make of his comments?
Yeah, great to be with you, Sharri. No, I'm not on something as important as changing our founding document. I think it is very important that our former national leaders make comment and contribute productively and respectfully to the debate, which I think the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison did in the chamber today. And I think some of his comments are very worthwhile referencing. This should be about uniting our country, not dividing our country. We all want reconciliation and better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. But Anthony Albanese's rush to the referendum, throwing the Karma Langton report and the pathway it had laid out the window on the way, is seriously dividing the country instead of bringing us together. And I think we've got grave concerns going forward about what the outcome will be if it just passes or just doesn't. Either way, we're going to be left with a more divided nation.
Well, Tony Sheldon, there's concern from Voice supporters that the referendum might be on track to fail. You know, the polls indicate that support is falling for the Voice. Do you think the government needs to come back to the table and renegotiate the wording? I mean, this is a suggestion that Julian Leeser's been campaigning for this week, and as you know, he resigned from his position in shadow cabinet because he does support the Voice.
Well, I think, what's critically important, and that is that we do actually look at what's the best way of us getting a mission statement for the country, and that does go to the heart of recognition and consultation, which the proposal from the Prime Minister does. And, I just want to take up that point that Bridget said. Look, the National Party made a decision before they even heard what the wording was for the referendum. They were opposed to it. I'm not surprised that she's supporting the ex-Prime Minister's position on this. I mean, the Prime Minister and ex-Prime Minister and I have one thing in common. We're both Shark supporters, and that makes us a bit of a tragics. Yeah. But that's about as far as it goes. I think Tony, when we start talking about... The
government must be worried now that this is not going to pass, given what the polls are indicating.
Look, quite clearly, and that is that this is a long way to go before the actual election, the referendum takes place. But there's also a lot of energy that's out there. There's lots of people that are waiting for that date to also go out there and speak to their communities about what this means. And I've got to just go back to the fact that if this is an opportunity for us as a country to turn around and deal with either the closing the gap, what we've failed to do for such a long period, different governments, this is not just Labor, it's just not the Liberal National Party, it's ongoing governments, and to reset a different objective for the country, a different mission statement, because the mission statement we've got now doesn't exist. And the referendum gives us that opportunity, and the debate will really get underway as we go. And just that question you quite rightly raised about the former Shadow Attorney General. He's made it very clear that he has a preference, but he also has, that's Julian Leeser, and he has a preference, but he also has a very strong view that vote yes. And that to his credit. I just got to pick up one other thing on
all right,
the comments
just very quickly, otherwise this is the Tony Sheldon show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Tony, because
There you go, Bridget. I'll hand it back to you. You can have a bit of a go. I'll just do a real quick one, and that is that the ex-Prime Minister also has to recognise the fact that religious groups, football groups, companies, unions, the community have a right to have a say on this, regardless of what he says in Parliament today. They have a right to make the decision.
Well, Bridget, just to respond to Tony Sheldon there. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, and just quickly, Sharri, because I know we've got other topics we want to discuss, and this is going to be going for another couple of months. It is that the failure of the Anthony Albanese government to take Australians into their confidence, explain the real reasons why they need to change the Constitution and how that change will impact our founding document and how it's interpreted by the High Court. The fact that they don't want to bring Australians on that journey and want to have this kind of vibe-like conversation with rock stars and footy heroes being pushing the yes case, I think just really doesn't give Australians confidence at this stage of the campaign that this is the right thing to do for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders or our nation going forward.